Next up, we have Whitney Stewart. Whitney is a senior Azure solution specialist. Welcome, Whitney.
Thank you so much, Sakita. So happy to be here. So good morning, everyone. I hope you're really enjoying the conference today. I'm Whitney Stewart, and this session is Cloud Migration and Trends You Should Know. So just a little bit about me and what we'll cover today. Again, Whitney Stewart, I work at Microsoft as a senior specialist, senior cloud specialist with a focus on cloud infrastructure. So think anything related to compute, networking, or storage, which are essentially the building blocks of the cloud. And I work with digital native customers and ISV customers, software vendors, on migrations, migrating them from on-prem to the cloud or extending their current environment to the cloud, which is multi-cloud. Prior, I worked at Intel as a field sales engineer, where I worked on our 5G product, edge compute, IoT designs with customers from build to deployment. And then before that, in our technology manufacturing group, working with global partners on semiconductor manufacturing and distribution. Outside of work, I love national parks. I've been to 18 of 62 so far. My husband and I love domestic and international travel, love science fiction, love reading it, love watching it. Super excited about Dune this coming November. And I love all things music. I love festivals, and I'm a person who makes a playlist for literally everything. Originally from Chicago, but located here in the Bay Area. And why I'm so excited to be here. I've attended Girl Geek X events and conferences for years. When I first moved to the Bay Area about 6 or so years ago, Girl Geek X was key in for me integrating into the community, learning about the industry, and meeting just amazing people who I still call friends today. So really honored to be here and excited to contribute to an organization that's provided me so much. Moving on to what we'll cover today. So we'll cover a typical cloud migration journey for customers. We'll talk through a traditional migration and then also hybrid and multi-cloud migrations. Then we'll talk through some common migration trends. And then we'll end on some things you should know with a particular focus on generative AI. Our last build conference for developers, we had over 100 AI product announcements. There's tons of articles and tons of buzz. As a infrastructure specialist, I really believe in getting rooted in the fundamentals. So I'll share a few things with you from my perspective that I believe would be great to know in this area. So let's dive into a cloud migration journey. And this will focus on, again, the traditional from on-premise into the cloud. One key point here I'd like to highlight is a cloud migration is a continuous process that takes it's significant organizational change initiatives across people, processes, and technologies. There's a concept called lift and shift, which essentially means rehosting assets in the cloud. And while that's true, it does imply that it's a one and done motion, when this is a process that takes a considerable collaboration and often spans at least 12 to 24 plus months. So I just think that's important to highlight as far as what that migration looks like overall. I'll use the principles from Microsoft's Cloud Adoption Framework, CAF, to divide the migration process essentially into 3 sections: the pre-migration, during migration, and then post-migration. So the pre-migration phase, this is really where customers spend or should spend the most amount of time really defining and aligning on what are the key reasons to move to the cloud. Is it cost? Do they have new business models that just require more data? Do they have SaaS offerings that they want to offer more flexible and efficient ways? There are a myriad of reasons, but having those key reasons defined and pulling in all of the right stakeholders across the business, so your application owners, your finance folks, and of course, getting buy-in from top-end leadership is key. And then once that's defined and written down, you have your North Star. So as things deviate.
We can't see your slides. Are you intending to share your slides?
Oh, I do. Here, let's see.
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. Thanks so much, Sujita. So just going back to the session, let me make sure. So going back to the actual migration journey, so talked through a little bit of the pre-migration stage. So essentially aligning, getting your North Star defined. The second part of that stage is really taking an inventory of your environment. So what are all of the databases? What are the applications? What are the interdependencies? How is information moving through those applications? What is the security posture there? And then defining what are the things that you want to move over? What do you want to leave behind? What are dormant? And of course, bringing in all of those stakeholders to ensure you're moving the things that you're supposed to, and have a really great idea of timeline and cost. So once that pre-migration stage is done, you really move into the during migration. That's where the pedal hits the street and you really execute on what you planned on. And a lot of this stage will take, a lot of what this stage will consist of is the actual migration of data. And that could be through automated tooling. It could be through an actual physical data box where you download information and then move it and rehost it on the cloud. Just depends what labor force a customer has available or what skill sets and how they prefer to move that information. And again, even though you have a plan, of course, sometimes things change. So maybe that application that you thought you'd replatform, which is essentially optimized during migration, you might have to refactor, leave it behind, and then maybe replan again. And that's really critical why having that North Star in the pre-migration phase is really important. So you have that and understand where and why you need to shift. And then, of course, the last stage is post-migration. This is really when you've moved all of those assets over and you start to establish a cadence in your cloud environment and really understand what works, what are your spikes, and then how do you optimize once you get a sense of trend and cadence, and also how do you manage and govern the environment once it's there. So I talked a little bit about security, but I did want to uplift it as it's really, really important. And like I mentioned, I love sci-fi, and I think castles are a great way to talk through the concept of defense in depth as a security principle for cloud migrations. So defense in depth really is a strategy that is putting security protocols at every layer of a cloud environment. I like to overlay it with the OSI model, which is a standard of how systems communicate, because it outlines your all the layers: application, compute, database, networking, and thinking of those are of the different layers of a system and the different layers of a castle. So when you think about a guard, in a castle, that's really trying to prevent and think about unauthorized entries. So that would be your access management and your firewalls. Your watchtowers would really be your network security. So watching and detecting for threats and then having actions once that is identified. And within your inner walls of the castle, that's really kind of where you have your critical data and assets, making sure if anything does get there, those things are encrypted and have those security calls and protocols in place. So the concept sometimes can seem a little bit redundant of having security at every layer, but really when you think about all of the botnets that exist and like the pretty successful attempts they've had at infiltrating systems and taking unauthorized information, it's pretty critical to think about this through the planning phase and of course during migration and how you want to optimize your environment for security. So going back to the migration journey, the two other options are hybrid and multi-cloud. So hybrid is essentially when you're moving some of your assets from on-prem to the cloud. And there are various reasons to do this: security, there might be business critical workloads that you might want to wait or have a wave migration. And really the same principles apply from a traditional on-prem here, in that you're planning, creating that North Star, assessing the environment. The key difference here is deciding what you'd like to leave behind, and then how do you ensure the networking and the dedicated pipes or networking has proximity to your physical data center so that you can move information seamlessly through that on-prem environment and the cloud environment. For multi-cloud, that's essentially when you're extending a current cloud environment and bursting into an additional cloud environment. Again, same principles. The key additional consideration here is what workloads and applications do you want hosted on various clouds? And there's many different ways customers decide to do this. A few examples of that are maybe hosting your production workloads on one cloud vendor and then hosting your internal workloads or internal applications on another. Sometimes customers partition their various clouds through region. So they might have a regional vendor in a certain area to get to their customers, and then a different vendor supporting a different region. So those are just a few different ways that customers host. and kind of design multi-cloud. And those are the few benefits really are having the flexibility to pick different capabilities for the best suit of your needs. Also avoiding vendor lock-in, high availability, which is just mitigating against outages. Nobody wants that. And then also workload optimization. So what are the best solutions across vendors for your particular workload? So for example, if you have streaming and you're really a feature that's really important to you is storage, but a new feature that's AI might be really important. Multi-cloud just gives you ability to choose across vendors what is the best service for that. So now that we've talked through a few migration pathways, let's get into some of the trends. So the key trend that we've noticed is during the last 10 years of digital transformation, most of that transformation and focus was applied to the application layer. So think of the application as like the top of the house. That's really where a human interface and sometimes machine-to-machine interface first engages. However, the infrastructure layer was not modernized during that period. And what we see as a result of that is a Gartner study sharing that over 70% of businesses who participated in a digital migration don't see the full ROI of those investments. And when we really pull back the covers, we see because the infrastructure layer was not modernized during the application optimizations. Now, don't get me wrong, the focus on application was amazing. It uplifted the criticality of DevOps, uplifted the concept of microservices and containerization, which is essentially decoupling functionality within an application. So those developments were critical. However, a key part that we miss there is the making sure that the infrastructure layer where your data resides was also modernized. The second migration trend that we've noticed is related to multi-cloud. So we talked earlier about what that journey looks like for customers and different ways that they design those multi-cloud environments. And what we've learned from those who have adopted multi-cloud is even though they've adopted and integrated additional clouds, they don't necessarily operate in parity, meaning a customer who's born or starts with one cloud, they have a workload and basically optimize that workload around that one cloud that they may have started with. So once you introduce another cloud, it may not actually have the same functionality for many reasons because it's new. There's not as much usage. It has just different features and you have to learn them differently. So a key learning here is even though you might have multiple environments, it might not necessarily mean they're operating at the same. For product managers, application developers, those who have end user customers, this is particularly relevant for you when you have services you're developing. You really want them to operate the same across any infrastructure. So this is a kind of a way that's not crises or outage that you can connect with your infrastructure team to ensure, hey, we're building this service. We want to make sure that it's optimized across all platforms so that customers who have all different types of cloud can enjoy them at the same level. And then the last trend is really more targeted towards what workloads were migrated. And what we've noticed is within the analytic workloads, most of those workloads that were migrated are more descriptive analytics, basically using current or historical information to identify trends. So think anything related to dashboards or synthesizing information, as opposed to real-time analytics, which is basically taking in information real time and processing it within the context of additional data structures. So think server logs, autonomous driving, fraud detection when you get a notification if you're somewhere and they're asking, hey, like, is this charge actually you? Those are all examples of real-time analytics. So just summarizing some of the migration trends and also looking ahead in what is to be expected essentially in the next wave of digital transformation is looking at infrastructure and application getting modernized together so you can optimize the use of these information applications and functionalities. Security across the layers, again, sometimes it seems redundant, but as far as like the increase of infiltrations and attacks, it's really important to consider how you want to secure your information, whether you have it on-prem, on the cloud, or hybrid. It's a key aspect to ensure that you're doing what you need to do, but also safely. From a sustainability perspective, really the concept here is doing more with less and using only what you need. And this is helpful not just from a cost perspective, but from a happy planet perspective. When you look at your workloads and assess how much compute they're utilizing, things to ask are, do you really need this much horsepower? Do you really need, if you're using compute, like what type of VMs, are there different processor architectures that you consider to make sure that you're getting the performance that you need, but not using any additional power that won't actually impact performance. And then the last point to consider here is inclusive infrastructure. Yes, inclusivity also applies to infrastructure. And essentially what that means is as solution and app developers are developing digital products that are primarily internet-based, are you considering giving and providing access to more than 1/3 of the world who does not have consistent connectivity? And partnering again with your infrastructure team on, hey, like I want this really awesome service or solution to be available. And how do we make sure that we're creating accessibility for those who don't have the consistent infrastructure of the internet and connectivity? And last but not least, sharing additional tools on generative AI. Again, we had tons of information this year and tools and information. I wanted to share a few things that I thought were really important and definitely encourage you to go out, try these tools, learn them, use them. ChatGPT, that's really using prompt to generate and understand text, is based on OpenAI's large language model technology. And it's really amazing. Codex is generating code and text from prompt, and then DALL-E is really generating images from prompt. And that's essentially what they look like. And there's also AI productivity. As a traveler, it's super helpful to see how you can synthesize information and work through it quickly. And these again are platform tools. You're the builders. Go out and use them and bring your thoughts to them. Ethical considerations, really, these are all cool and amazing things, but it's not just technology, it's the people that they impact and the people that use them. So there's a really great transparency note that I absolutely would encourage folks to visit on just OpenAI services. Use cases that they're great for, and use cases that you might want to think about, is that actually the best place to use this technology. So with that, we'll end with always keep learning. Please go out, use these tools, learn how to do them, and build wonderful things. Thank you so much, and opening it up for Q&A. Do you have any tips on starting a career in cloud? And Sukrita, you can keep me honest here if I have time to address this question.
Yeah, go ahead and answer that one quickly, and then we can wrap.
Absolutely, and feel free to reach out for any additional questions. But for this one, this is a pretty new space. It's only really been the last 10, 15 years. I would say go out, talk to folks, have one-on-ones, look at different certifications if there are specific areas within the cloud that you like to get started in. And again, use the tools. In any interview or engagement, they will ask, what have you designed? What have you built? And if you're using them even outside of having a job, that's just great to be able to add to your resume.
Thank you so much, Whitney. This was absolutely wonderful. As you could tell, people commenting on your visuals and the content that you shared. So we thank you for your time. Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye.